Alright, so I wanted to give some feedback and just play some tones on the Blue Wave Tremolo pedal by Lovepedal. Normally I wouldn't really bother with this, but I did notice there's not a whole lot out there about that pedal. When I actually was looking at it, I didn't see any demos. I decided to take a chance on it. It was on sale, so I took a chance on it, and I've been really happy with it so far. But you guys can kind of see what you think based on what you hear. But I think a lot of people will be interested in this pedal for sure. So first off, just for my clean tone, I'm going to be playing a Gibson ES335. My amp is a 20 watt Marshall Origin. I actually, though, have put it in a different cabinet, so it's got a 12-inch 55 hertz Heritage Greenback as the speaker in an 18 watt style Marshall cabinet. So anyway, so that's the guitar and the amp. I'll also play a few other pedals in conjunction with it, because to me a lot of what makes a pedal great or not is how well it works with other stuff. So anyway, here's my clean tone. This is the neck pickup on an ES335. Alright, this is the bridge pickup. So, and in the middle. I typically run with the volume controls on like 7 for both pickups. That way I have a little extra juice if I want it. So I can roll it up and get a nice crunch. I tend to set my amp just under the edge of breakup so that a lot of ways I can send it into overdrive, either from the guitar or from pedals or from both. So that was the clean tone. Here is the Blue Wave. I'm going to set everything to start with kind of right around noon, except for the rate. Let's just go all noon to start with. It's got 4 controls. It's got a speed, which is what you would normally think of. I'll go ahead and show you the range on that. The slowest speed's a little bit slower than a Fender in amp. Not by much, but just a little bit slower than the slowest Fender setting. All the way up, it does that weird thing that trims do. So anyway, this is middle's pretty normal. As you notice, it sounds, it's a good sounding trim. At this point, there's not really a whole lot that's super exciting about it, I think, but it is a good sounding trim. So that's in the middle. That's the neck. That's the bridge, obviously. So like I said, all really good tones as far as that goes. At this point, it's a fairly standard but good sounding standard trim. So that's kind of covers the speed and the bass main tone. The depth is pretty standard, not too much to write home. All the way down, actually, more or less turns the pedal off in some ways, but two of the other controls are still active, even if you turn the depth all the way down. The bloom and the level. I'll kind of come back to that later because that allows some cool stuff. And even with the depth all the way down and everything kind of nooned out, there's still a little tonal magic going on in this pedal. It's not, I would not buy this pedal if I wanted the most neutral, totally transparent trim ever. It adds its own mojo to the mix, which I really dig, but it is something you should know. So anyway, the depth all the way down more or less disables it, obviously, because there's no depth. All the way up, it's, you know, a pretty classic ping pong. So not crazy extreme. With the rate and the depth, other than the super fast setting, they didn't go nuts, which some people don't like. But the way I look at it is it's hard to dial in a bad setting other than making the rate all the way fast. I usually like the depth about in the middle, and I tend to prefer like a really slow trim. I use trim mostly on bluesy stuff, so I want that slow, groovy trim. Go a little past noon on the depth. So that's the rate and the depth, or speed and depth as it's marked on the pedal. Fairly standard, but good implementations nonetheless. Next we have what they call, or well, let's go to the level since that's the most understandable. It's volume all the way down, and you can hear me strumming. Nothing's coming out of the amp. All the way down, it's cutting your clean signal. Everything's out. All the way up, and it's a decent boost. But nothing like huge. Basically, there's a lot of, from about 0 to about 3. So from 0 to kind of noon, it's pretty gradual, and then after noon, it's very subtle, the differences. But what this level control actually allows you to do is, if you set it in the middle, it's kind of like a standard trim. If you push it all the way up, it's basically set so that the lowest volume on the depth is like your normal, and it's like it pulses a higher amplitude when it pulses, versus how a trim generally works is it pulls out volume. If you set the level all the way up, it's like it's pulsing in volume. And then, you know, about halfway through, like, you know, right there, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but right there, kind of the middle of the trim wave is kind of your average volume. And then at noon, the highest, the peak of the trim is your standard volume. So what it allows you to do, it allows you to decide how you want your trim to work. Do you want it to add volume when it pulses, or do you want it to pull volume away in the troughs or somewhere in between? Which that ends up being really useful. I tend to actually like for it to add volume on the troughs. I want that pulse to really hit you. So I tend to, you know, not necessarily run it all the way up, but pretty close volume-wise. It's not a huge boost. And we'll come back to level as well, because that also allows one more cool thing you can do with this pedal. So those three are fairly standard. You see those controls on a lot of trim pedals. The other one is one, maybe it's out there on other pedals, but I've not seen really anything like it. They call it Bloom. Basically, so far as I can tell, it adds definitely some EQ, but also like some compression. But it's interactive with the tremolo wave, to where you can go from like a really super warm, you're completely overloading the tube that's powering the tremolo type sound, to a very kind of thin, cutting, sharp tremolo. Yeah, it's harder to describe, so let's just play it and you can kind of see. So anyway, this is kind of the middle. That's the middle sort of standard trim. Sounds like this. At that level, it sounds almost indistinguishable. I have a vintage super reverb, and it sounds pretty indistinguishable when set this way. You know, maybe like right there, from a vintage tube tremolo. Actually, it's a little cleaner. Mine's really old, so it's got a little funk to it, in kind of a good way, but also it's just, this is a little. So anyway, pretty standard stuff there. But let's roll this bloom all the way down counterclockwise. So you hear that compression, and you know it's really fattening it up and adding some compression to it, like serious levels of it. And this, if you throw in some overdrive, I'm actually just gonna turn I'm on the bridge, and that's how fat this is. This is the bridge pickup of. It's adding a ton of fatness to that bridge pickup. Let me turn the volume up and get a little natural amp overdrive here. That's the bridge pickup. Now, if you want to see some serious fatness, this is the neck pickup. I just love that tone, especially if I'm here just playing at the house, or maybe just me and a drummer or something like that. That is just a sick tone. I'm going to add in some reverb. It's actually just a Wampler Faux Spring Reverb in the loop of my Marshall. So I'm going to add that in just to really nail that blues vibe. So yeah, you can get super thick in there. I am going to now add in a Tumnus. That's with a Tumnus. Now I'm going to add in a Euphoria, get even more. So that's on the neck pickup. Let's go down to the bridge pickup. So yeah, so that's with the bloom all the way down counterclockwise. Let's now I'm gonna turn all the boosts and everything off, and go back to the bass tone here. Let me turn my volume on my guitar down so I'm not pushing the amp with it as well. So that's with it all the way counterclockwise. Let's roll the bloom all the way clockwise now. So that's, you can kind of see it's still got like a greasy tube trim feel to it, but it's like really tight now. I think it still has some compression. The EQ curve is different. It's tightened things up, but it's still funky, just in a very different way. It's much brighter, less bloomy, more kind of... So let's add a boost to it. I'm going to turn on the Euphoria. So you can kind of see you got that, other end extreme there. And to me, all of these tones are super usable. Like, I could definitely use that tone. I can use the standard tone in the middle. And I think also the bloom adds some, as you roll it counterclockwise, maybe adds some volume as well. So, to me, all of these, I think like a standard Fender is maybe like right there. So yeah, now one last thing that's kind of cool about this is this blend and the level actually allows you to use this just as a boost. So I'm going to roll the depth all the way off, which means that the actual trim isn't really doing anything. I'm going to turn the level all the way up. I'm going to roll the boost all the way counterclockwise. So this is otherwise just going into my amp, nothing going on. So you can see my amp is, kind of on that verge. So it's not adding a ton of volume, but it gives it that last little push over the edge. Plus it adds kind of its own EQ and compression. It's actually, to me, like, it's almost like a pedal on its own in that setting. It ends up being kind of cool that way. I don't know how much I would use that, just because I'm not somebody who in the middle of playing will get down and turn knobs. But I could definitely see using that to dial in a tone on a recording for sure, even if I wasn't going to use the trim aspect of it. In a show, I tend to pick my favorite setting. One last thing about this is what I found. I did gig with this the other night. Is as much as I love this just rolled all the way down on the bloom control playing alone, in a band mix I actually like it a good bit higher to keep me present in the mix. But that really, this control, like, yeah, you can get those at home super fat tones that are so fun. You go to gig though, and you got the ability to, dial it in just right for something that works in a mix on a gig as well. So that is just super, super awesome to me. So that's how I had it set pretty much last night when I played it. But anyway, let's just get a few more little fun tones going here. And then I'll wrap this up.